Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, December 18, 2024 meeting of the Royal Oak Downtown Development Authority. At this time, we will have public comment. Anybody who wishes to address the board, now would be the time, unless they're on an agenda item later on the agenda. Who would like to go first? Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Bill Harrison, Trafford Road, Royal Oak. Just a few questions. The farmers market wanted to do their traditional tree lighting service with Santa Claus turning on the lights, etc. And the market manager told me she wasn't allowed to do that, that Witt's already had the tree lighting, his lighting in the park. Wondering, why was she told she couldn't do that? She's been doing it for years. The cookie crawl. Daniel ordered the cookies, had it all set up, and all of a sudden Witt's is running the cookie crawl. What the hell is that? In the 5th Street plan, west of Washington, between Washington and Lafayette, the drivability or the walkway or whatever is kind of snaky. How are the garbage trucks and delivery trucks going to get down that? It would seem that it would be smarter to have a straight shot between the alley and Lafayette. You know, it's just incredulous, the designs that these people come up with, you know? So anyway, that's my point. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mike Zatkowski. I'm a resident of Royal Oak for about 11 years now. I want to thank you for listening to me last month about the lighting issue between 5th and 6th on Washington. And it sounds like the comments I heard after that made me think that you are aware and you want to take some action and do something. So I thank you for that. Last night at about 7:30, I went out for a walk just to see if there were other problems. And I think you're probably all aware of this too, but there's lights out all over the place. Main, Washington, 4th, 2nd, 11 Mile, Sherman, and Lafayette. And I could give you a street-by-street breakdown, but there's 53 lamps out. And on Lafayette, there are 4 of the large, I don't know what you call street lights, the old-fashioned ones, the big ones. There's 4 of those out between 4th and 11. It seems pretty dangerous. So thank you for taking attention to this. It looks like there's something on the agenda tonight about the lighting, so I'll stop talking.
Thank you very much. Mr. Obert.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Frank Hobart, and I own a building at 408 South Washington. It used to be a Kresge's and a A&P grocery store. So we have a dirt alley behind our building. It's been 25 years that I've owned the building, and we've had a dirt alley. I'm hoping that we're going to make some progress next year to get this dirt alley paved. Everybody else seems to have probably paved alleys, unless anybody else can tell me that there's another dirt alley downtown. But I would rather not have that significance of being the only dirt alley in all of downtown. I came here last month and I mentioned that in the 25 years that I've owned the building, paid $1.1 million in property taxes. Out of that, between my neighbors, probably $2-3 million, and we know the 5th pays. This gentleman here could probably tell me that they're probably maybe $half to $750,000 per year. There's enough money here to pave this alley. It's not a big amount of money. It's the will to do so. I spoke to somebody who's in on a walker, and he says he refuses to come up to the back door of Lily's because he can't make it through the alley. And that's just rude. We should be able to show people that, yeah, they're welcome in downtown Royal Oak, and they should be able to use our facilities. And the alley should not be minefield, especially somebody who's in a wheelchair or in a walker. It's not just the pavement that's there, it's the potholes in the pavement. And when they filled with ice and snow, it would be embarrassing to have to pick somebody up off the ground because they're stuck, and they fall over. So please, don't forget about us, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holden. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the table. Item number 3, informational meeting. Tim, you want to start us off on this?
Yeah, very briefly. As the cover memo says, the DDA is required to have 2 informational meetings a year. Obviously, you had one last month that addressed some issues and overview. We did another one for this month, and Daniel put together an annual report that went and covered a lot of the activities that have on gone and the expenses with them. If you'd like, he can briefly run through that annual report with you and take any questions.
Yeah. So in this annual report, you'll note that from the very beginning, it starts with covering what the Downtown Development Authority is, as well as who serves on the board of directors, as well as the goals that this board approves as part of the budgeting process, kind of steers where the budget goes. From there, you'll see the Downtown Dollars page, which includes some stats on where we gave it out, how many participated in it as far as retailers and restaurants, and then what the average redemption per storefront, again, from the fiscal year of July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. Following that, we'll run into our infrastructure projects, which is a large bulk of the things that we do, including holiday lights, regular maintenance, some information on the trash receptacle replacements, wayfinding and plaza project, downtown paving, the ongoing conversation on tree grates, as well as a couple miscellaneous maintenance items and expenses that relate to our maintenance and infrastructure. From there, you'll note the marketing and advertising section. Within this, there is a summary on the paid media. You'll note that there is a reference to Appendix A. Appendix A is in process right now. That's where I'm going to break down the impressions and the reach of the dollars that you spent with these paid medias. So exactly how many impressions, how many eyes saw those dollars, such as the commercials on Comcast or heard it on the radio from iHeart. Below that, you'll note the shared and owned media. Those are our channels like social media and newsletter. We are overperforming in terms of the newsletter. Our open rate was 37.2%. The average open rate for a tourism newsletter is around 30% or less. So we overperformed last fiscal year. In that regard, from there you'll note the events and activities. So this board, as well as the Marketing and Business Relations Committee, have previously asked to utilize the Placer Labs foot traffic data that we get. So within this, you'll note the DDA funding. It's broken up by things that we hosted, as well as estimated attendance. Some of these attendance numbers for the estimated ones can be a little difficult if it takes part as like a visit these participating businesses, simply because I can't geofence for a specific event footprint when it's done like that. But then if you go to the sponsored events, it breaks it down by what the DDA funding was, who produced the event, the estimated attendance per Placer Labs, which, as a reminder, the software boasts 96 to 98% accuracy tested against the TSA, and then breaks it down by sponsorship per person to a dollar figure. You'll note multiple pages of that, as well as some fast stats on the end of page 9. From there, we move into annual foot traffic from that same period. This one shows the 2 million people a year that come to downtown Royal Oak, an average of 4.17 times per year for 8.3 million visits. Talks about the average dwell time is 149 minutes, as well as the most popular times of day, where they're coming from. You can see that all of those are ranked in terms of the top 7. And then also highlights the busiest day of the year, the slowest day of the year, And also for consideration, because we are a walkable downtown, that bottom left chart's going to show you in order of the month with the most visitors to the least, and then to the right, you'll note that I've highlighted what the average temperature was for that month. Because we as a downtown that's walkable, most folks get out and about walking when it's comfortable to do so. The outlier here being, of course, the month of December, and that has to do with the holidays. To the right, in the little file folder figure, there is historical figures. So just a quick reference on the number of visits in the year as well as the number of visitors. As you can see, fiscal year 23 matches the number of visits from fiscal year 17. So by and large, matching as well as exceeding in terms of number of visitors just from year-to-year comparison. And this relates to a prior report that I gave this board when we first got the software that indicated somewhat of a downward bell curve. So where before the pandemic we were slightly downslipping a little bit on our foot traffic, part of that can be denoted to the improvements to other downtowns in the area, the improvements to District Detroit, and kind of the tightening competition of where folks are going out for their nightlife and their eating and shopping and all of that. And then would highlight that we dipped during COVID, but we've begun rebounding, and now we are actually meeting and outperforming what we were doing prior. As a note, the historical figures only go back to 2017 because this data and software and algorithm only existed since January 1st of that year. From there, on pages 11 and 12, you will see copies of the financial reports that were posted ahead of this meeting, as is our annual requirement for Public Act 57.
Thank you, Daniel. Does anybody have any questions?
Very good.
Just want to make a comment.
Sure.
I think it's really good to look at cost per sponsorship per person. Those are very interesting figures.
Thank you. I wanted to also just highlight two items that the DDA participated in, one being the downtown paving. There was some significant projects that we were able to get done this year for the downtown roads. And the second one being the trash receptacle replacement that to me is a major improvement from where we were a year ago and what we had prior to what we currently have right now. I think it's made a significant difference. So I just wanted to highlight those two items. If there's nothing else, anything else? Okay, so we'll close the informational meeting, resume the regular meeting, and move on to the approval of minutes for 11/20/2024. Motion by Director Von Staden to approve. Second by Director London. Any questions for staff regarding those changes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6 is expense items, monthly expenses for November 2024. Any questions for staff regarding these items? Seeing none, I will move on to regular business. First item is 222 East 6th Street, Hazelton, Second Amendment Reimbursement Agreement. Mr. Twain?
Briefly to go over that, you may recall that the DDA entered into an agreement with the Hazelton LLC in regards to public improvements that were to occur as part of the multifamily project that you see at 6th and Troy Street, 6th and William, that block. As part of that, the DDA's reimbursement agreement had certain dates in it to show movement going forward. The original one had a date that was December, that they had to have an occupancy prior to May 31st, 2024. That was extended through the end of this month. They are very close to obtaining their temporary C of O for the building. Yeah, obviously the floor and the units aren't completed, but pursuant to the agreement, they're required to have at least occupancy for the building prior to the end of the month. They are asking for an extension to run that forward as a second amendment. The amendment, there's a letter from the developer's attorney attached, and there's also a suggested resolution based on that letter and the actual second amendments attached that would allow the extension through March 31st of 2025. And all of those items are attached. They are here. And if you have questions of them directly, but this didn't go to the committee just given the timing of it, so there wasn't a recommendation on it, but the committee did support it previously, as did the board, and staff has no objection. As I said, they are very close to obtaining that, and it's a reasonable extension in staff's opinion.
Okay. Questions? Yes.
I can appreciate the difficulties with Otis Elevator and materials and how the construction environment is a challenge these days. So I'm in support of extending it, but I would want to ask whether or not it makes sense to rework the language a tad to say that you have a temporary certificate of occupancy, because 3 months alone may not get you there. And I don't think we want to go through this again. So, but I think that a temporary certificate of occupancy could be probably easily achieved in 3 months. So perhaps we think about the language where it says certificate of occupancy, we say temporary certificate of occupancy.
Well, okay.
I'll make on that is I think the terminology in the building office is fine. As soon as they get an occupancy for the building, meaning all life safety items are addressed. I don't want to get into the weeds of wording. We're comfortable with them meeting this with simply a certificate for the building.
Okay.
Each floor will get its own temporary, as you want to call it, as they finish the floors. And I don't think it's the intent of having all of that done prior to the meeting the deadline. So I think we're very comfortable, and based on past legal review of it, we're very comfortable with the wording without getting into whether it's temporary, because it's not a temporary for the building. It's for the building. The building's done, all the life safety, the core and shell's done. So it's not a temporary for that, it's the final for the core and shell.
Sorry, so you're saying the building, the core and shell of the building is substantially complete?
Right, that's what they're really going to go after. So, I mean, that's the distinction on it.
So if the core and shell is substantially complete, there should be no reason to extend?
We can get into wordsmithing it. We're comfortable with this. This is the standard language that we've used. I really don't want to get into splitting hairs on temporary versus final versus.
I think what they're saying is that the building, the core and shell is not substantially complete because the elevator's not done, and the core and shell will be done by March 31st. And I think that is where they're saying that, to where that the others the CVO would be other ones.
Yeah, that's fine. I just think that we need to, if we get to March 31st and there is another extension, it seems as though that's a waste of the petitioner's time as well as our time. And so I don't want us to find ourselves at March 31st and still feeling like we have to go to a third amendment, for example. So that's my only comment about that. 3 months is not a lot of time in this world.
Anything else for staff? Questions for the petitioner? Okay. So what's the action? Director Yazbek.
It certainly seems like these things, like last time, are out of the control of the petitioner, so I would move to grant the extension requested.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Director Yazbek, second by Director Dunstan. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if I could just
Yes,
approach real quick.
sure.
I want to leave this with you, and you can pass it around, but it not only has the exterior, but pictures of the interior. 85% of the units are completed.
Okay.
So the problem that we've had, as we noted, is that always the elevator, all the infrastructure's in and the units are in, they have to come back. They got about 2 weeks of work so that they're operational. Then we can hook up all the life safety systems that are already in, hook them up to the elevators, then we're pretty much done. So and we appreciate that, and we've explained that to Tim. So as soon as Otis Elevator can get there, and God bless them, they're, they're kind of a monopoly, we'll get it done. But thank you very much. We appreciate, and we thank you for all your support of the project, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, 2025 DDA meeting schedule.
Very briefly, there's an established policy to review potential conflicts with religious holidays each year. The DDA's rules and bylaws currently establish the third Wednesday of each month at 4 o'clock for your meetings. We did provide a link to the various sites that have religious holidays on there in case you wanted to determine to move to a date other than the third Wednesday of each month. If the board's comfortable with the current meeting as established in the rules and regulations, there is a suggested resolution for meetings in 2025.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll move the motion.
Okay.
I did take the time to go through and look at it, and I didn't see anything that would create a conflict in nothing that should affect anything on this board.
Very good. Motion by Director Dunstan.
I'll second.
Second by Director Wallenweber. Further discussion? Yes.
I'm going to support the motion, but I would suggest that if we agreed to take each and every one of these holidays off, I think it would be a much better world.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Okay, next item, award professional engineering services asset management plan for downtown street lighting. Mr. Twain.
Yes, this has been an ongoing topic for the Infrastructure Committee as well as the City Engineering Department and the Department of Public Services for quite some time. The city engineer did put together a request for proposals to address the downtown streetlights, and when we say that, it's looking at the lights, but it's primarily going to focus probably in the underground utility lines and things at this point. You may recall that a couple years ago the DDA did replace all the globes and the actual light fixtures with LED lights. So the issues that are out there are not the above ground items, but they're actually going to evaluate those as well, focus on the current conditions and assessments and make recommendations as where improvements need to occur based on what the experts would see in the field, and come up with a plan for addressing those as part of the responses to the RFP. And they did receive 2 bids from OHM and from Hubble Clark and Roth, I believe. They were somewhat different in the details. Staff is recommending to go with OHM advisors, primarily because the proposal was much more detailed in a sense of what they were going to provide and address over part of their analysis. Also, their proposal was less focused on the GIS data set than Hubble, Roth and Clark's was more focused on putting that data set together. And I don't think that's really the focus of what the DDA is looking for. Even though OHM's is more expensive, as I said, I think it's more clearly outlined in what they're going to provide. So that's the recommendation from staff. Now, the proposals did not get submitted or reviewed by the Infrastructure Committee, so there is no recommendation from the committee. I thought it was important to get this in front of the DDA in sense of moving the project along as quick as possible rather than waiting another month for your review. However, if you have questions, one of your options are to refer it to the Infrastructure Committee for a recommendation if you have questions that I can't address today. I am not an expert on electrical supplies and power, so if it's related to that, I probably won't be able to address those. But I'll stop there and see if there are questions or where the board wants to go.
Mr. Wallenweber.
I know we can take questions, but I'll be happy to make the motion to approve the recommended firm. I know both firms have dealt with them in the past. I think one, even though slightly more expensive, was a little bit more thorough in what they have, in their approach to it. So I'll make the motion to approve, and if there's second, and then questions. So.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the table. Supported by Director Van Ness. So let's get to the discussion portion. Who wants to go first? Director Dunstan.
So, I mean, I don't really understand a lot of this, the GIS and the condition assessment, so I Googled and got my junior engineering certificate. But I think I would like to see, I would like to get a little bit more explanation on this, and so I could understand better. I understand from what I read, condition assessment is a more thorough way of going and assessing what's wrong, and I think that's a good thing. But I'd like to understand it a little bit better, because it's, you know, they are substantially more, although OHM did, they went, you know, condition assessment and then GIS data set, and the other company was the other way around, and the GIS data set's considerably less to perform. I just would like to understand in a little bit more detail what that means. I mean, do they put a little camera down there and look at what's going on? Do they do some boring and try to look and see the condition? I want to understand where this and I think in their proposal, I think it's like $60-some thousand, I think, for the condition assessment.
Yes.
And it, you know, if it wasn't if it was like $25,000, I might say, yeah, you know, but it's $100,000. I'd like to understand it a little bit better myself. So if this was to go back to the committee, I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
Well, in terms, my
discussion?
understanding of the GIS data set is part of what they'll be mapping or putting together in the plan is not only a condition of the lights, where the lights are, how many of them are on each block segment, but also where they're supplied from, where the transformers boxes are that supply them, what other services might be off of those. Some of you may be aware that MPS is also attached to them currently. They're an assessment of the electrical outlet boxes.
the GIS data set, my understanding is to map that all out so that engineering and the city electrician have a good record going forward and how to address it. Some of the issue is that there isn't a good record of all the lighting that's out there because they've been put in over a number of years. The first decorative lights that were put in downtown were done in the mid to late 70s with block grant funding, and it was prior to the DDA participating in it. So some of it's very old, and so part of the GIS data set is to start building that from the ground up so they have a good record going forward. I don't think that's the focus of what the DDA is interested in, so that's partly why I was recommending the one that had less focus on that as well. In addition, I thought the OHM outlined better what their assessments were going to address. Nothing against Hubble, Roth, and Cart, but it basically said we're going to look at your 800 lights downtown approximately and tell you what's wrong with them. So it was hard to evaluate that. So the only downside that I could see in the OHM one was the timeline involved versus the 20 days from the other one, but sometimes you are going to get what that means. If you can get this done in 20 days, you might not be really addressing the issues that are there, and we may be able to go back to OHM and say, can you shorten that for us if they're the selected party. But again, if you want to refer it to the committee for early January meeting, that's fine. I would only point out that early January is getting jammed with a bunch of other meetings right now that I can touch on in a minute. But whatever the board wants to do, and I would have liked to have got it to the committee too, but we just didn't have time. I thought it was important to bring it here.
Can I ask that? So Tim, once, no matter which firm is approved here, what happens once they present their findings? Are they done then, or do they stick along for a little bit of consulting as the work begins?
Well, their job is to come up with an asset management plan to tell us where are the problems and what are the problems, and then yes, we would have to have some other contract with the appropriate firms to actually do the work.
Okay. So they would.
But we don't know what the problems are right now. We're guessing that the conduit underground is collapsing and shorting out the wires. That's the feeling from the city's electrician. Some of the work might be done with DPS personnel. Other segments might take an outside contractor, given we might have to bore lines, we might have to do other things. So the first step was, what's our problem and where is it? So that's the intent of this.
So they don't actually once work begins, they don't oversee. They just like identify what should be touched first.
Right.
And then it goes on to someone else.
Yeah.
Right.
And the city does now have the city electrician at one point left, so we had an issue with that. The city's facility director left at one point, and so we didn't have people in place to help oversee some things. I think we have that now. We could use OHM like you do in an architectural agreement to oversee the work in the future. But that's not part of this proposal as far as I see it. But again, if you have those questions, I mean, if you want to have the city engineer and the DPS facilities people come to an infrastructure meeting, I'd be happy to try and set that up. I don't want you to rush into this, but I also know it's an important issue for everyone.
Okay.
So task 3, recommendations and cost estimates, is included in the OHM proposal. So as a part of their deliverable, it includes develop recommendations to correct all deficiencies in the lighting system based on observed conditions in the field. Short-term and long-term recommendations will be presented, as well as any future replacements. With that information, I think that we would know what type of RFP we need to put out in order to rectify whatever problems have been identified. So they're providing us the information we need.
Okay, would you agree, though, that nowhere in this proposal is there a lot of discussion about the underground evaluation that Mr. Twing mentioned? Would you agree, or can we assume that that's part of this?
I don't know if you're asking.
Oh,
but
yeah,
my comment is yes, they're doing a condition assessment of the lighting system, not above ground. It's the whole system. It's the below ground, it's the transformers, it's the feed, it's actually an assessment potentially of are the poles needing repair, because some of the poles have been replaced, others haven't. So yes, I would, to answer your question, yes, the assessment's going to include, is the problem the underground feed? Is the problem the transformer? Is the problem there's too many lights on a particular circuit and you need to put in a new circuit? That's the kind of thing, and again, I'm not an expert, but that's the kind of thing I would anticipate this assessment's going to come out and do.
Yeah, I think I guess my only concern would be, and you already touched on it, Mr. Twing, is whether we could push this timeline along a little tighter, I guess, would be the best term.
I can certainly ask and see if we can get it adjusted to a shorter schedule and see what they...
It sure would be nice to be able to, you know, come late March and April to be able to start doing some work on this. I assume this is something that's going to be, well, they did say citywide, so it sounds like a pretty big project.
Yeah,
Once
I
we get it
don't
going.
anticipate you're going to fund all the improvements in a single
Yeah.
year. You're going to have to figure it out as...
Right, right. And I'm sure we'll be able to give some input as to, as this gentleman did here today, address some of the concerns, the bigger concerns first, and go with that. In fact, after we deal with this, I'm going to ask Mr. Twing whether, is there anything that the city electrician can do now as a temporary Band-Aid on some of the more difficult issues that are in the downtown, or has he already looked at that? And
Well, they're both, the facilities director and the city electrician are both addressing issues as they can. They're putting Band-Aids on, though, they're not...
which is what I'm hoping for, I guess. What I'm trying to get to here is that we're not just waiting for
No.
this to happen.
Right.
To try and make some repairs where repairs can be made.
Right.
Thank you. Who's next? Director Keith.
Yeah, I'm looking through and I don't see anything talking about the transformers or anything on the wiring. I see like it's just gonna be the lights. It's just in what I'm reading. I don't see that type of detail. And I understand the condition assessment, but it could be, you know, I just don't think it's laid out. And what I'm reading here, I don't see that it's gonna get into the wiring. I think it's just at the light poles and determining if they work or not, and then but it doesn't seem like it's gonna go to the transformer, the circuitry of it, from what I can read, or what I've read.
Well, and again, based on the discussions I've had, it's based on the lighting system. You can't have a lighting system without transformers and without the power lines. So they don't mention every component. They don't mention the circuits. They don't. I mean, they're going to do a condition assessment of the lighting system. So but I mean, if there's clarity items, again, I'm not in a position to. I don't want to rush this. If you have questions and you want the committee to meet with them, I'd be more than happy to schedule that. But it's going to delay it at least until your January meeting to start. So that's.
Yeah,
And we're in the holidays, so it's not like they're going to kick this off next week either. So
yeah, I mean, I would recommend that we kick it and get some interviews and talk to them so we can get some better questions. I mean, to me, it looks very. I do condition assessments across multiple facilities and different things, and there's a lot that is assumed, and I
Right.
think we should challenge their assumptions. Where the difference of, I mean, because one, if we're gonna go apples to apples, the cheaper one is better. I don't think either of them solves the problem, from what I can read. It's just gonna tell us which lights work and don't, and that's in the circuitry. And I can get a plug tester and the person at night, we can go walk around, and I think we had 52 that came out today that we were defined that don't work, and bring a plug tester and we can go check them all. I mean, that's essentially what they're gonna do to 700 lights.
So, I'm gonna go to Director Yesbeck next, but, what I'm looking at here, or what I'm feeling here, is we have no problem with the motion or, the company here, but we need some clarification to make us feel a little bit better here. So my recommendation would be to send this back to infrastructure. We're gonna meet very early in January, which is only a couple weeks away here. So, and then maybe Mr. Twain could have, somebody from the engineering department there that hopefully can maybe answer a question. And also maybe we could come up with, a list of, clarifications that we would like to see, before you or Ms. Donahue signs a contract with this company, or with whichever company. Director Yesbeck.
Yes, on their own schedule. I don't think anybody's starting in December, so I don't think we're going to lose that much time sending it back. So I would support that too. But in the interim, I would, this is in my field of expertise, but the RFP looked very detailed, what the staff put out there for these companies. And if both of these contractors responded to the RFP, OHM certainly was more detailed in the response, but the other group said we're going to respond to the RFP, everything in the RFP. So I don't know that they weren't specific. The timeline, obviously, as you pointed out, Mr. Twing, is the most attractive thing about the other vendor, and the 40,000 isn't unattractive either. Are you suggesting that from your or the engineering review that this OHM would do more or different work than the other company? Is that what we're saying?
No, I'm not suggesting it. They had a different focus, and it wasn't as detailed in terms of their reply, so it leaves open-ended questions in terms of what they're actually doing and the responsiveness to it. Generally saying on an RFP, you want them to address all the component parts fairly specifically, in my opinion, but particularly if you're signing a proposal that outlines those and it doesn't directly match up. But again, if you want to have one or both companies come, I'll be more than happy to have them come to an infrastructure meeting.
I would at least, at minimum, that's not a bad idea, I don't think, but at minimum have like a confirmation letter or to each company. Are we correct in assuming that your proposal includes A, B, C, D, and whatever we want to confirm? It's just the disparity between 20 days and 5 months. Something doesn't make sense there. So.
We gotta hire the second guys and they'll be done before the other guys even start.
Yeah.
If they are the better contract or engineer.
Something's missing. So infrastructure certainly is the move, but I think in the interim, maybe we put together a letter, confirming certain items that are critical to us, and then we can go from there. That would be my suggestion.
And there's one comment here on the first one. It says, after 1 week in the field, OHM and the city will negotiate an updated fee and schedule based on the inspection production of the crew. So it's like, that seems like they're looking for an opportunity for a change order,
Director Dunstan.
And I think timing-wise, I think our first meeting next year is on the 15th of January, so it's really only pushing it back 2 weeks.
Right.
Because I doubt they're going to do anything during the holidays.
Right.
So the one comment is also to focus on the deliverable from either of the companies that we hire, that if the GIS data set is simply the updating of the ArcGIS hub and creating a layer for that interface that shows us the location of the lights, I don't think that as a deliverable is enough. I think that we want to understand more of what a system diagram that says, you know, this is where the transformers are, this is where the wiring goes, this is, you know, because that will give us a much better foundation for the next step. So simply a map with a set of dots on it that's accessible via ArcGIS Hub is, in my opinion, and a PDF of that with some pretty pictures or some ugly photos is not enough in terms of the deliverable.
Mr. Waller-Weber.
One thing, I would be happy to withdraw the motion to approve, makes that easier so we could just assign it to the subcommittee. But one of the differences in the two, and I think, Gail, you just hit it on the head, we do not have I won't even say a robust GIS system. We don't really have a GIS system with the various layers that we should have. That we have an open position that's been kicked back and forth as to where it would go. We've got to meet some others, but that's one of the things for them to develop for something, or one of the vendors to develop for something that we really don't have a way of using or adding on to at this point. Didn't make some sense to me, but that's just my editorial comment. But I'd be happy to remove the motion from the floor so that this could be then easily assigned to the infrastructure committee.
Okay, so we're done with that motion. Director Van Ness.
If I could just add one thing, based on everything, the concerns that have been mentioned, I think it makes sense to go back to committee, especially with the holidays. We're not losing that much time, but I do want to reiterate the kind of the urgency of this issue. And what I don't want to see happen is us go to committee, talk about something, then they have to bring something back to the next committee meeting, and all of a sudden it's March or later, where we're actually getting something approved. So whatever we can do to tee this up for the committee meeting, maybe as part of the recommendation to send this committee, if we could kind of make that part of it, whether that's a letter or just bullet points or whatever of concern, so that both of these vendors are ready to talk about that and have something prepared to vote on for our next DDA meeting.
Yeah, my only stipulation to doing that, as you requested, would be that engineering participate in the infrastructure meeting, because I believe as we go through this project, they're going to be the ones that are going to be taking the actual lead here. So I'd like to get on the same page with them and make sure that they have all the same clarifications that we do as we move this thing forward. And I agree with you. I would like to be able to come back to whatever it is, the January 15th meeting, and have a recommendation come out of that committee for the full board to act on, so that we can get the project moving. That being said, I don't know if we need a motion to move it.
No, if you just want to refer it to committee.
We just want to refer it back to, and without objection from the board, we'll refer this to infrastructure.
And the only thing I would ask that if you've got specific questions,
Yeah.
get those to me and, prior to the meeting, so I have time to send it out. So it's a short time window here for the committee, so maybe January 3rd, if you can get all your questions to me by then. I will also review the meeting video, and anything that was brought up today, I'll make as part of that list, and we'll go from there. But if you can get me any specific items you want them to address, I'll have that by January 3rd. That'd be great.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Twain. We'll move on to the next item, award professional land surveying services. Mr. Twain.
Some of you may know, hopefully all of you do, there is discussion about potentially demolishing the old Center Street parking deck. That discussion was somewhat predicated on the elevator repair costs that the city's been dealing with and other issues, and whether it made any sense to continue to put
revenue or funds into the repairing of that old structure that was built in 1974 and it's been upgraded a couple of times. So as part of that discussion to consider the demolition of the parking deck, several things have been ongoing. Staff is putting together an RFP for the demolition services. That's anticipated to be released in January of 2025 with a short window to get bids back, so we'll have a cost of demolition. Some of the items that are slowing that RFP down are identifying everything that needs to occur as part of the demolition process. One of those is there's Verizon cell towers on top of the structure. We had to give them a 90-day window to let them know that that's occurring. We have a meeting scheduled with Verizon the first week of January, so they can come in and we can talk about how or where that their services might be relocated under that lease. So that's one of the items. There are other items that are powered out of that deck, and we need to figure out how to make sure those are reconnected as part of the demolition, including the MPS parking meters that run along the west side of Center Street. We're also looking at whether or not the reconfiguration of the lot and the parking gates, that the way it currently flows, need to be considered and how that's demoed. And some of you may be aware there is stairways that connect the new deck to the old deck, and if we just tear those down and out, we have to replace, put in some security windows or gating or materials to match that, so that people don't just walk out. So there's lots of items that are going into that as part of the RFP for a bid response. But we're pretty close. I think we'll release it in January at some point. Probably have a 30 to 45 day request to turn it around and get back to us on that. As I said, the notification to Verizon has gone out. It went out December 5th, and we do have a meeting with them. I also signed an agreement with a company to do the asbestos testing in the deck. Since that was under my $3,000 limit, I just went ahead to schedule that, get it done, so we have that out of the way. That is occurring the first week of January. They're going to come in and do an assessment of whether there's asbestos in the building or in the structure and where, or whether there's not. We'll have that report, and we need that as part of the demolition as well. So those are the things that have been ongoing. The survey, what we want to be able to follow up with right quickly after any demolition that may occur, and that decision will occur down the road once we have the bids for the demolition, how it gets paid for, whether it's brownfield money that pays for it, whether there's some DDA assistance or whatever. But what we want to follow that up with is what's there afterwards. At the end of your packet, you'll see there's a conceptual layout of a surface parking lot. This is, again, very conceptual, very just thoughts of, if we lose 480 spots in that deck, and we can put back under this concept 150, is that unacceptable based on the dollar amount when we get the demo back? Also, what we're trying to do is, with the survey, is get this parcel surveyed so that engineering can actually design the surface lot, so that we can actually bid out the installation of the surface lot. So the demolition would occur, and we can follow right into the construction of a surface lot without any kind of delay or loss of an extended period of time. The survey from Noack and Fraus, which is a entity that, firm that the city already has agreements with, has provided a proposal to the engineering department based on what they need to do the design, and the cost of that is $6,000 based on the understanding of the project. Again, that was put together from the city engineer as to what they need them to do in order to design the surface lot. Since that exceeded my authority to award, it's here for your consideration, and there is a resolution if you concur in the cover memo.
Okay, questions for Mr. Twing? Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion by Director Yazbek. Second by Director Glassel. Is there any discussion or anything on this?
Who supported it?
Yeah. All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Okay, we are down to the annual financial reports. Mr. Twing, we were
Sure.
these were in the informational meeting, weren't they?
Yeah, this is really informational. It was Daniel included them in the annual report document. The only difference on these is this is what it'll look like when we post it and publish it in the newspaper, as we're required to do. It's no actions necessary on it. It's simply your budget from 2023, 2024, what was budgeted, and then what actually was expended, or the revenue that actually came in through June 30th of 2024, both for the operating fund, and you'll notice in that fund, the fund balance increased by some $3,200. So there's a fund balance of $122,700.43. The other item, the second page, is your development fund. You will see there the revenues that were actually received versus what was budgeted, as well as the expenses for each of the major headings. In the budgets I provide to you, I break out under miscellaneous contracted services what all those are, and the promotions what all those are related to. But in this document, I combine them all simply to save cost and putting it in the newspaper. So you'll see that contracted services, we budgeted some $3 million and we've spent $1.7 million. The balance of that was really for Fifth Street. You didn't really spend any money on the Fifth Street improvements. The promotions committee, those are everything from your sponsored events to your media items to all those activity downtown dollars. So all of those are lumped into that activity related to that. Biggest item was the transfer to the auto parking system at slightly over $2 million. What that included was your ongoing commitment to the Second Street parking deck, Center Street parking deck, the new one, of about $585,000 a year through the life of that debt service. And then a one-time contribution to date of $1.5 million to deal with the deficit elimination plan that was because of the parking system's lack of funding. The big item down that shows in red is you spent some $1.2 million beyond revenues and expenditures, so your fund balance dropped from 2.9 million to 1.7 roughly. Again, there's no action required. This is really informational. We are required to post it in the newspaper, and I'll be sending a similar report before the end of the year to the state treasury, so they have it. if there's questions on it, I'd be happy to address them, but it's simply what was budgeted and what actually occurred.
Questions for Mr. Twing? Director Keith?
I just have one question in regards to the electrical work that we were just discussing. Is how do we get that into the next year's budget so that we can start putting away some cash for that remediation that we need to take care of?
There is some funding in it. You were going to allocate 100,000, so there's not that allocated at this point. I assume you'll do that at your January meeting. You'll allocate some dollar amount. And then you'll have to decide going forward how much you want to spend on those actual improvements once that plan's in place.
That's what I'm more looking at. So January, we can set the budget for the fixes is what I'm looking at. So we could,
for the next fiscal year, you'll start talking about that January, February. The other budgets we do too will start in January, so you'll start seeing those.
Anything else? Just one question for me, Mr. Twing. Did the property tax revenues, were there some things that we had anticipated coming online and haven't yet, or?
Well, again, this budget was put together in January of, let me see, probably January of 2023. So it's effectively 2 years old.
Gotcha.
And it ended in June. What impacted the revenue estimate at the time was after the estimate, the 6.8 million. As you'll recall, Baker College came offline and became a nonprofit, and so did somebody else. I think there was a reduction in the assessment on the hotel property to the tune of you lost about $1 million in what was currently estimated prior to that, so.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay, seeing none, move on. Daniel, you have one item for us.
Yes, prior to this meeting, I included a paper version of a resolution related to a grant that we will hopefully be seeking. This comes to you at this time because it is a new development to me that you had to outwardly support by name the WRAP program in this resolution. As part of this, there would need to be unanimous support from the board to actually bring this up under business and vote on it. So just a quick background for you. The Revitalization and Placemaking WRAP Fund Program is something coordinated by the MEDC at the state level. They essentially, following the COVID-19 pandemic, there's this new grant sort of track that they've created year over year, which it breaks down to a couple different types of projects, including real estate rehabilitation, some facade sort of sub-grant programs that we can do. But the one we're going to go after is the public places-based infrastructure, being that the Plaza project is a major placemaking transformation project. We're going to transform an old roadway into a pedestrian plaza. And so this kind of meets the pinnacle of the definition for why this grant exists. The minimum application is $500,000. The maximum is $1 million or 50% of the cost, whichever is less. So based on kind of the concept that this board blessed last month, the estimated project cost being $3.3 million overall. If you take out utilities from that, because the water fund should fund that, we're looking at $3 million overall. You take out the $311,000 that the county has granted us, we're looking at $1.6 million remaining after that, plus some change. So you have potentially $1 million here for a portion of that funding. Sorry, I misspoke. You have 1.6 after some funding here. Essentially, the deadline is the end of January. What we would do if the board approves these resolutions is continue putting together our our documents, going to the city commission next month, getting them to give final approval on that concept, that they're okay with us taking a street that the city owns and converting it into a plaza that the DDA will then pay for the construction with grant funding and then maintain that plaza afterward. That's what that second resolution refers to. The grant would need to be expended by June 30th, 2027, which is almost an entire year after the Main Street grant needs to be spent. With this, you currently have 1.5 million in the current fiscal year. So if construction, fingers crossed, began this coming spring, you would have some funding there that's paying for a portion of what you are already paying for. And so if you expended, say, $1 million of that, then we can look at the next budgeting process like Mr. Twing just alluded to, discussing how does after July 1st that look on your budget. If you could expend more in this year of that 1.5 million you have, if you can get grant funding from the state of $1 million, add that to the 300,000 from the county, we're looking closer to the plaza being fully funded and you guys being closer to the actual 50% of project cost as opposed to 100% of the project cost. This
Mr.
does,
Wallenweber.
I'll make the motion to approve the grant application as outlined.
before any voting on the motion, there does need to be a motion to add it to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to add it to the agenda first.
I'll second that.
Motion by Director Wallenweber, second by Director London to add this item to the agenda. Any questions, objections? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And this item is now on the agenda.
And I'll make the motion to approve the resolutions as outlined. Daniel, not a question, but I believe this goes through, the MEDC funding goes through SEMCOG. And they will approve, and we have some, certainly as a longtime member of SEMCOG, the city is, and we'll have some good influence into the potential appropriation here, so.
Okay. So I have a motion on the table from Director Wallenweber for the two resolutions before you.
I'll second.
Second by Director London. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Any further reports? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Wallenweber?
Yeah, I just want to indicate, this is my last meeting, so nice to meet you all. Merry Christmas to all, etc. I look forward to going back to retirement on January 2nd, so I will not be here. But hopefully, when you break ground on 5th Street or some other neat project, you can invite me back as a visitor and stuff. Second thing I wanted to mention, there are appointments up. I know Director London is eligible for another term. I don't know. We need to have, as a member of the board, a resident in the area, and we're not yet clear that we have someone, and whether the city commission wants to cut back on memberships or the number of people on the board is unclear at this point. So this allows me to just discuss this, or mention this to you, and kick it down the road for Joe when he comes, because he'll be taking official position at your January meeting. But I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention here.
Okay. Then I would like to bring to the board's attention, I want to thank Mr. Wallenweber for his service to this board and as acting city manager for the time he has been here. He's helped the DDA improve communications with the commission, as well as helping to move along some of the major projects that are important to the DDA. Wish him well moving forward in your next endeavor.
Back to retirement.
Also, I'm not sure where we stand. I know that, and I don't want to miss this window of opportunity, so I apologize if I'm being premature, but it is my understanding that Director Von Staten will be leaving us at some point after today's meeting. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to recognize her. She's been a steady voice on our board. She has shared her knowledge in many areas that has been extremely valuable, not only to the board, but to all the citizens of Royal Oak. So I want to thank her, appreciate her dedication. She surely will be missed, and we wish her well. Anything else that anybody wants to bring to our attention? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Daniel?
So later this week, I will be sending an email to the board. We did receive our 2024 accreditation certificate at the last city commission meeting. What that means is now we begin reaccrediting for 2025, and we have our evaluation date now set for, I believe, the same day as your next board meeting. So you'll get some information and an agenda as far as participating in the evaluation, as well as a little bit more interactive this year as far as our scoring for our indicators on whether or not we're meeting the select level community stuff. So just wanted to put that on your radar. Please keep an eye out for that and mark it on your calendar so that we can get as much board participation as possible.
Very good.
That is it. Thank you.
Director Yazbek.
I will wish everybody happy holidays, along with my motion to adjourn.
Excellent. I have a motion by Director Yazbek, second by Director Logasso. I too wish everybody a safe and happy holiday. And if there's no objection, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned.
I was going to join.